I should say, like, when we started SpaceX and Tesla, I mean, I really thought the probability of success was very low. And actually, the goal was to get the public excited about that and get NASA's budget increased. So that was actually the original goal. And then we came very close to both companies not succeeding in 2008. You know, we'd had 3 failures of the SpaceX rocket, so we were 0 for 3. We had the crazy financial recession. Pretty hard to raise money for a startup car company if GM and Chrysler were going bankrupt. Fortunately, at the end of 2008, the 4th launch, that was the last launch we had money for, worked for SpaceX, and then we closed the Tesla financing round, as you know, Christmas Eve 2008, last hour of the last day that it was possible. I would definitely advise people who are starting a company to expect a long period of quite high difficulty.
Yeah.
And it can be very, very painful for several years.
We have the most advanced rocket engine that's ever been designed. There's a lot of components and a lot of unique materials. So we had to invent several alloys that don't exist in order to make this engine work. It's the first engine that's actually better than the Russian RD engines, which were amazing design. You've got propellant and hot gas flowing simultaneously to so many different places on the engine, and they all have a recursive effect on each other. I've often said prototypes are easy, production is hard. It's quite hard to control. There's a reason no one's made this before.
If the output is more valuable than the input, which is really, that's profit. Like, the output's more valuable than the input, that says you have a useful company. If you can come up with something like that, your business will be successful for sure. Maybe analogous to what they say about, you know, if you're in a race,
Yeah.
Don't worry about what the other runners are doing.
Yeah.
Just run.
Yeah.
If your customers love you, your odds of success are dramatically higher. Yeah. It's so rare that you can buy a product and you love the product when you bought it. There are very few things that fit into that category. Basically, if you get it such that your customers want you to succeed, then you probably will. I'm reasonably happy with how things turned out. When I was in college, I just thought, well, what are the things that are most likely to affect the future of humanity, just at a macro level? And it just seemed like it would be like the internet and sustainable energy, making life multiplanetary, and then genetics and AI.
I really want to make sure that there is a good future for humanity, and that we're on a path to understanding the nature of the universe. The meaning of life, why are we here, how do we get here?
A lot of things I learned in college actually were pretty helpful. I mean, I think the physics approach to thinking is very good, like the first principles approach. First principles analysis, I think, is something that can be applied to really any walk of life, anything really. It's really just saying, let's boil something down to the most fundamental principles, the things that we are most confident are true at a foundational level. Applying the first principles approach to thinking is, I think, a good way to figure out counterintuitive situations. So that was really a helpful thing to learn. And then another good physics tool is thinking about things in the limit. If you take a particular thing and you scale it to a very large number or to a very small number, how do things change? Initially, the goal was just to make enough money to pay the rent. It wasn't to do anything beyond that. Anything to do with software is a low capital endeavor. So I didn't have any money. At software, you can just write, like, by yourself. And you don't need a lot of atoms. Like, you don't need a lot of tooling and equipment, and so it's not capital intensive. So the ability to start a company, if it's software related, and it's the first company, is much, much easier. Well, I think the most remarkable thing that we do have today is the internet and access to all the world's information from anywhere. So that's having a supercomputer in your pocket is, I think, something people wouldn't have predicted, in Back to the Future. Yeah. So that's the biggest thing. What I did initially was, well, you go back to like college times. I was working on energy storage technologies for electric vehicles, and then the internet was kind of happening. It was clear like the internet was happening like back in like 94, 95, and I wasn't sure if what I worked on in the PhD would actually be useful. It could be academically useful, but not practically useful. I think it could result in a PhD and adding some leaf to the tree of knowledge, but then discovering that, well, it's not really gonna matter. I wasn't sure. I mean, so it was like I was uncertain as to whether success was one of the possible outcomes. Like I thought maybe it was, but I wasn't sure. And then I thought, well, if I watch the internet get built while I'm doing this, that would be really frustrating. I thought probably I'd get back to it, and did end up doing that. The internet was happening, like really taking off, although most people weren't aware of it in '95. And so I figured, like, electric vehicle technology, energy storage technology, there'll be some sort of natural progression in that, and I could come back to it later. But the internet, was really, that was the moment to really do something. Until Netscape went public, I think at the end of '95, nobody even thought there was like you could make a valuable company on the internet. So it was really from the perspective of, it wasn't like, oh, I want to. Make a bunch of money. It was actually it's like I want to just be a part of building this thing that I thought was like a nervous system. Like you'd send letters like that on paper. And with the internet, anyone who had a connection anywhere in the world would have access to all the world's information, just like sort of a nervous system. So humanity was effectively becoming a superorganism, and qualitatively different than what it had been before. And so I wanted to be part of that. But the precursor to SpaceX was not, the idea wasn't really to create a company. It was to try to figure out why we hadn't gone to send people to Mars. In '69, when people first landed on the moon, if you'd asked the public what would the situation be in 2015, I think they would imagine that we would have a base on the moon, a base on Mars, and be all over the solar system by now. I was sort of thinking, well, is there some way to reignite the dream of Apollo? But in the beginning, I thought it was a question of will. But I actually think that my original premise was wrong. We had not lost the will to explore, but people did not think there was a way. And if people don't think there's a way, then they won't bash their head against the wall continuously. They'll sort of give up. If you're trying to convince the public to do something, you have to say, okay, how's this going to read? And what message are we going to try to convey? What will people respond to? What would I respond to if I was, sort of an objective? Member of the public. If you're trying to change people's minds or get people fired up about something, then you got to think, okay, what's that message? What's going to get them really excited? If we can send a small greenhouse to the surface of Mars, this will be the first life on Mars, as far as we knew, furthest that life's ever traveled. You have this great shot of green plants on a red background, and I thought, well, that maybe that would get people excited about sending people to Mars.
So I would say I'm motivated by curiosity more than anything, and just a desire to think about the future and not be sad. There are certainly some big risks that humanity faces. Population collapse is one of the biggest threats to the future of human civilization, and that is what is going on right now. There's a lot of discussion of like this problem or that problem, and a lot of people are sad about the future and that they're pessimistic. I don't care about optimism or pessimism. We're going to get it done. AI and robotics will bring out what might be termed the age of abundance. I'm not saying that I have some certain answer to that risk, but this really will be a world of abundance. Any goods and services will be available to anyone who wants them. It'll be so cheap to have goods and services, it'll be ridiculous. I can't emphasize that enough. So long as we push hard and are not complacent, the future's going to be great. Don't worry about it. I mean, worry about it, but if you worry about it, ironically, it will be a self-unfulfilling prophecy.